Good morning, friends. This is She's At It Again, and my name is Tanya, and today I am excited to share the recipe for fudge cake with you. When I say fudge, I mean like the really, really dark chocolate, the really, really moist kind, the kind that you think, I don't need anything chocolate, but you cannot pass this up. Okay, breaking all the rules here, this has sugar in it. Side note to that, I'm not going to be the one eating it. This is for someone else. I am making it for my neighbor, and it will promptly leave my house as soon as it's finished because the smell is just almost too much for me. It's just fabulous. First thing we want to do is preheat our oven to 350. So I'll turn that on. There's a few things we need to get done ahead of time, so we'll start that. I'm going to be combining let's see, in our pan we want a cup of water, a half a cup of butter, and a half a cup of oil. So I'm going to put that in our pan over here. And we want to bring this to a boil, not a full rolling like a hard boil like you're going to be cooking catfish in, but we want it to be melted well and have a little bit of bubbles in it. So we want it hot. The next thing we're going to do is add a teaspoon of baking soda. I have my recipe here, so I keep having to refer back to it. Let's see. A teaspoon of baking soda to 1/2 of a cup of buttermilk. If you're not one of those people who normally buys buttermilk, but you kind of want to get back into the baking routine, I would say that would be a good thing to keep on hand. Buttermilk is handy to have for so many things. Buttermilk is just the remains of what you have when you make butter. If you have whole milk and you make butter, and you take the butter out as a solid, then what's left in your container is buttermilk. So that's all buttermilk is. It's nothing scary. When I was in high school, I remember someone saying, well, buttermilk's just rotten milk. And I'm thinking, I've been drinking rotten milk all along, but no, I haven't been drinking rotten milk all along. It's just what's left when you make butter from whole milk. So my friends were geniuses. Okay, we want to coat our baking pan. And I want y'all to take a look at this baking pan. This, it looks like it's gonna fall apart, and I'm almost afraid to send this to my neighbor with a cake in it because I'm afraid it might fall apart. But this pan was a gift from a friend of mine a few years ago, and honestly, I can't tell you anything I've ever baked in this except for fudge cake. It's almost like a tradition now. This is what my fudge cake gets baked in. And I love this pan, so when it breaks, I'm going to be really sad and have to go get another one. But my friend that gave this to me knows the things I like because this is very well loved. Now, I don't always just stick my hands in the coconut oil and grease the pan, but because our weather has been pretty cool lately and my hands are so dry, I don't mind getting the coconut oil in my hands because I'm not even going to wash them off. I just rub it in like lotion. Set our coconut oil aside. I'm going to put a little bit of flour in that just so it'll release well. I'm not going to turn this cake out of the pan to send it to them. It'll still be in the pan. Almost don't want to jiggle it around much. Get a brush and kind of knock it around. Always helps if you turn the burner on when you're trying to heat something up. I got too many things going. This is one of those really soft silicone brushes, so it's just knocking the flour around in there for me. All right, the next step is we'll set our prepared pan aside. And I know this looks like a ridiculously oversized mixing bowl, but this is what I always mix this in, just because there's a few components to it and you keep having to add things. This is not a hard recipe. It's basic things you have in your kitchen. It's just a matter of, you don't use a mixer. It's just one of those kind of odd cakes. You've probably heard this called something else. I can't remember what the name of it is, that I've seen in different cookbooks, but I just call it fudge cake because it's just good like fudge. So the first thing we want to put in here is 2 cups of plain flour. This is organic, obviously unbleached flour. To that, you're going to add 1.5 cups of sugar. This is raw sugar. Notice it's kind of a beige color. It's not bright white, so it's not your bleached sugar that you would normally find in the store shelves, either under a store brand or a brand name. But this, I think the name of this is Zulka, and it comes in a clear plastic bag, and I'm a fan of that. It's non-GMO sugar, which sugar cane is known for being genetically modified, so I'm just a little careful about that. To that, we are going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then to that, I have measured out in this cup 4.5 tablespoons of cocoa. And this is very, very dark cocoa. And in my opinion, the darker the better. I just love it. So with a whisk, just gently stir that around. You don't want to get the flour to flying around in the air. Get out any lumps of cocoa there might be in there. We're waiting on our liquid to start boiling. Now after we make our cake, we'll put it in the oven and we'll start on our frosting. And the frosting is called Mrs. McGregor's Shiny Chocolate Frosting. And the story behind that, just briefly, is for a while I did some catering and I came up with this recipe for this frosting, and it was just so pretty and I wanted to use it on everything I could get my hands on. But the name of my little catering gig I had going was Mrs. McGregor's Specialty Sweets. So anyway, all that being said, that's what the name of this frosting is. And McGregor comes from my husband's Scottish background. He was from the McGregor clan, so we kind of hung on to that name in a few aspects. So kind of a fun little name there. But the frosting is, if they were in a fight, the frosting could beat this cake up. It's just that good. And it's pretty too. Now some people have told me, I made that frosting that was in your cookbook. It's a little cookbook that I wrote a few years ago, and I never could get it to thicken up. But this has cornstarch in it, so you do have to cook it until it thickens. And then you turn the heat down immediately, or the cornstarch just has that quirkiness to it. It loses its thickening capabilities, and then it goes watery again. But it's not hard to make. It's just one of those things you have to know. You have to cook it to a high enough temperature to where it does get thick. Okay, let's check on our mixture here. It is coming to a boil right now. You got to get that stick of butter melted in there too. That's the key. Everything has to be liquid. Okay, this is at a nice rolling boil. I think you can see that. It's kind of fluffy. All right, we are going to pour our hot liquid in our flour and cocoa mixture. again, don't get out your electric mixer to prepare this. You do not need it. That almost looks like dirt. It's so black. I love it. All right, even though that mixture is pretty hot, we're gonna add our vanilla. And this is my vanilla. I make my own vanilla out of organic vodka made with sugar cane. I think it's the only one in the world that's made with sugar cane. This calls for a teaspoon of vanilla, and I use this little baby medicine dropper, and I know where my 1 teaspoon mark is. Put that right in the center. So good smelling. All right, isn't that a funky little bottle? And then we're going to put our 2 eggs in there that we've broken into a bowl. We don't want to scramble them with the hot mixture, so the vanilla cools it down just a bit. And then we're going to pour right over that our buttermilk that has our baking soda in it that's over there just bubbling away. This is kind of going to be, if you will, a substitute for baking powder because it's activated with the acid and the alkaline. Okay, make sure we got everything in there, and we do. Bring this over here. Don't want an abundance of flour in the corner. All right. It is a really oversized bowl, but I think you can see from the ingredients I put in there and having to mix it the way I did. That's why I have this big bowl. Guys, I'm telling you, this smells so good. Just the batter itself is just almost intoxicating. It smells so good. And for those of you allergic to chocolate, I am so sorry. All right, set our bowl aside. We're gonna wait for our oven to preheat, and when it does, we'll get this in the oven. Meantime, I'm gonna gather up all my dishes and wash those while we're waiting on that. Okay, timer went off, and I am going to put that cake on a different pan. Just because if the pan falls apart, I don't want it to fall apart in my oven. All right, we're gonna set our timer for 35 minutes. And we'll be back in a bit. Okay, we're back over to the stovetop now. Our cake is in the oven, it's baking, so we have a little bit of time right now. We're going to be making Mrs. McGregor's shiny chocolate frosting, and in our ingredients we have a cup of sugar, again raw sugar, unbleached raw sugar. We'll do 6 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa. Let me get my spoon that's kind of slick. If you've ever, for beginning bakers, I know that the seasoned bakers don't need to be told this, but I'm going to try to show this with both cameras here. If you have a can of cocoa and you want a good leveling, something to level your spoon off with, if you will, when you take that cover off, if you will leave half of it on there, that's a good leveler for that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 level tablespoons. Run your spoon through your sugar, and that'll get the rest of the cocoa off. To that, we will add 3 level tablespoons of cornstarch. Again, when you have your cornstarch, when you open it for the first time, if you'll just take this, only peel it back halfway, don't throw this away, leave it on there as your leveling tool. 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. This cornstarch is non-GMO, and we like that because corn is also known as being, a lot of it's grown that's genetically modified. Not a fan of that, but if that's what you want to eat, you go right ahead. And let's get a little whisk. This is one of my smaller whisks. Just gently stir that together. That cornstarch will fly around the kitchen if you get a heavy hand on it. Oops, some flipped right out of the pan there. Now, we don't have our pan heating up yet. We're going to add just a little bit, about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And that's all the salt we'll add to that. We have a cup of water. And just pour all that water right in there. Now we'll turn the burner on. We're going to turn it about a medium heat. We don't want it heating up so fast that it starts burning things, but we want to get it heating up pretty good. You can always turn it up more later if you need to. Give that mixture a stir, that way the sugar starts dissolving and the cocoa and the cornstarch get incorporated into it. We have about 20 minutes left on our cake, so this frosting should be done by the time our cake comes out. Now, we don't want to put the frosting on the hot cake. We're just going to have the frosting made to where when the cake cools off, it'll be ready to go on. I already had time to wash all my dishes from making the cake, so this is just our next step. And if you're wondering, doesn't she have a dishwasher? Yes, I have a dishwasher, but that's for plates and spoons and glasses and things like that. I hardly ever put my cookware in the dishwasher. I'm just kind of funky about that. And it's not so much that I think the dishwasher is going to hurt it. It's just that I'm going to need those dishes again before I run the dishwasher. I only run the dishwasher maybe twice a week or so. But I use my dishes continually, so I don't want it to be in the dishwasher when it's something I need. Then I just have to wash it again. Today in real time is the Thursday before Valentine's Day. So today is the 10th of February. And oh, how I wish you had this recipe before Valentine's Day, because that's what my neighbor's going to do. She's wanting this cake. She's buying this cake for me, for her family, for Valentine's Day. That's a good mama and a good wife right there. But unfortunately, it takes us a little while. My husband is the editor of these videos, and it takes us a little while to get them all done. I'm so slow, and he's really good at what he's doing, and he's learning in the process. So he gets a lot of grace in that area, but he's doing a great job. But I wish this had come out before Valentine's Day so you could have a chance to make this for somebody that needs to be shown some love. But the honey fudge will do just fine because I know that's out already. Maybe Easter. This would be a good Easter cake too. Turn our temperature up just a little bit for briefly. Anything that contains cornstarch when you're cooking it on the stovetop, you don't have to continuously, vigorously stir it, but just periodically run your whisk along the bottom of it. I'm just in the habit of standing here stirring things because I don't have anything else to do. I'm just a doer. But you don't want that cornstarch sticking to the bottom because it will easily scorch if you're not careful, particularly if you have the heat up high. And you can feel when it starts getting thick because your whisk will kind of have that resistance from the bottom of the pan. Guys, I'm just telling you, this is good enough to drink right here. I'm not even kidding when I tell you that. It smells so good. It's kind of ridiculous. We're going to stir this and cook this until it starts to get thick. This will not be one of those rocket science things you figure out. You will know when it gets thick. And when it gets about the consistency of a pudding, then you will take it off the heat, and we're going to be adding 4 tablespoons of butter and a teaspoon of vanilla. And if you don't have a good quality vanilla, I would encourage you to check into that, either making your own or buying just a small bottle of good quality vanilla. And vanilla is not going to contain a product called vanillin with an IN at the end. That is a chemically processed vanilla, and it's not actual vanilla. So if you will switch to that, that's just another baby step in trying to eat better foods to make your body work better. And plus it tastes better too, and it smells better. You can see why people were texting me and emailing me saying, I made that frosting and it just didn't get thick. Somebody just did that recently, a good friend of mine in Tulsa. I made that frosting and it didn't thicken up very well, because you do have to keep stirring it for a while. It takes cornstarch a while. It has to be a hot mixture for it to activate it and for it to become thick. But like I said, you only want it to get to that thick point and then remove it from the heat, because if you keep heating cornstarch, it then reverts back to a liquid state and it no longer makes things thick. Just a note. Cake is looking pretty in there. I can feel a little bit of thickening in the bottom of the pan right now, so that means it's getting started. You can see this sticking a little bit to the spatula now, so you know there's some thickening going on in the bottom. Ah, there we go. Once it starts thickening, that's when you kind of want to be extra attentive to your whisking in there, because that's the point where you don't want to miss the mark at where you need to stop cooking it. Right now it looks like about as thick as honey. That's not to the point you want to stop. If you were to stop whisking it, it will get bubbles in it. So that's how you know it's hot enough, at least. Now when I'm stirring it, it leaves a trail through the mix, so it's a little bit thicker now. Be sure and get your whisk into the corners of that saucepan. You don't want that part overcooking and sticking to the pan. That's why I'm using a smaller whisk as opposed to a big one. I'm turning the heat down just a little bit. Okay, we're going to turn the heat off. Let me make sure my pan is still in camera shot. Okay. That one is. We have a little over a minute left on our cake. I'm going to drop that butter in. We're going to get a teaspoon of vanilla out of here. And as this cools, it's going to thicken just slightly. It's going to stay shiny, and it is the prettiest, most delightful chocolate frosting you will probably ever use. You will never even look at the canned frosting in the supermarket, much less buy it. I will never ever tell you not to use this as a dip for fruit. You could add cream cheese to it, and it would be the hit of the party if you were to put it in the center of a platter of fruit like bananas, strawberries, pineapple, even some potato chips, things like that. Okay, our cake is ready to come out of the oven. See it on at least one camera. So here we go. I am happy to announce my pan did not break. I'm going to take this camera and move it over here. Show you that cake. All right, so we're going to come back when the cake is cooled, and we're going to put this frosting on it. And this is an easy one because this is a cake that you leave in the pan. You can make this as a layer cake if you'd like. There's no rules about what size or shape you can use, but using it as a layer cake, as a layer cake, you just have to frost the sides and the center of it. But when you do it in a 9x13 pan, it's just as easy as pouring it over there, making sure it's spread to the side, you walk off. It's just that good. Okay, we'll be back in just a bit. We'll show you the final product. Okay, here we go. Our cake is cooled off. It is cool enough to the touch where I can just barely feel the residual heat, almost like it is just, yeah, it's not too warm. It's not gonna melt the frosting. It's just like it's sitting outside in the heat of the day. So we are going to pour our frosting right on top. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So it's thick. It is like pudding, just like lovely black pudding. I can't even explain how good this smells. I just talked to my husband a while ago. He called and he said, if people could just know how good this stuff is, they would watch these videos and make things. And I said, you know what? You're not going to convince anybody of anything. They just have to try it. So this is one of those things you're going to have to take my word for it. In the field of chocolate, this is probably my favorite thing to eat right here in this pan. This frosting goes on quickly and it is perfect. My neighbor said that her daughter is at home sick today, the one that is buying this cake. She said her daughter is at home sick today, but she's watching my YouTube videos. Is that not the sweetest thing ever? I feel bad that she's sick, but I'm glad she's getting a really good education while she's at home. All right. Cake is perfect. Ugh, I'm gonna have to lick that spatula now. Okay guys, see you next time on the next video. Thanks for tuning in.